What's going on, everyone? So, Patrick Dempsey was on the Today Show and spoke about Scream 7. Patrick Dempsey reveals he has had talks about returning for Scream 7. I'm waiting on the script. So, again, Patrick Dempsey was on the Today Show, and they were, just kind of asking him questions about, hey, Scream 7, you're married to Sidney Prescott and that universe and that franchise, and he even confirmed that that's the case. For those that are wondering, obviously, Neve Campbell had confirmed in Scream 5 in an interview that, yes, that Mark, because it was just said Mark, when Dewey's like, oh, how's Mark? It was kind of like, oh, is it Mark Kincaid? And then later on, Neve Campbell in an interview confirmed that, yes, they told her that it is Mark Kincaid. And Patrick Dempsey now followed that up, confirming that as well. So we have both Patrick Dempsey and Neve Campbell now confirming that they are married in the Scream universe. Look, I said this before, you got to get Patrick Dempsey on board. I imagine that he will be, right? He said he's just kind of waiting for the script. And in that interview, he seemed very excited. He seemed like he's very, like he's on board for it. There was a long time, because they tried to get Patrick Dempsey before, not Spyglass, but, they didn't for Scream 5, but they tried to get him on several occasions, and the scheduling conflicts, things like that, whatever the case may be as to why he didn't return. But after doing, Thanksgiving and a few other horror films, it seems like he's kind of more willing, more on board, which I understand. Earlier in his career, you got to think Scream 3 was 25 years ago. He was probably not wanting to be typecast as like this, guy in horror films. So a lot of people don't want that. They want to go and do other things and be able to do other things. But now, he's older in his career, and that might be more willing to kind of just like, hey, let me take the roles that are available. Look, he needs to be back, because they established him in the Scream universe as arguably this most significant piece ever. Right, you're talking about Sidney Prescott's husband. You're talking about the father of her kids. That's not something you can just kind of brush by, right? Especially when you established that it's somebody we are familiar with. If it was just some random person, right? Like if it wasn't Mark, it was, oh, how's John? And it's like, well, who's John? Well, then at that point, you can cast whoever you want as John. The problem is that now we have multiple confirmations that Patrick Dempsey himself now even, that he is married to Sidney Prescott. You can't just not have him in the film. Which, look, if I'm Patrick Dempsey, that's my card to play, right? Like, hey, you guys need me. Like, if I'm Patrick Dempsey, I'm getting a payday, right? Because it's just like, what are you gonna do? You're just never gonna have me and her children in the film? What, you're going to do a film with Sidney and her kids and not the husband? Right? Like, it just, how long can you keep saying I'm on vacation or something? Right? Like, it's just, you established and set a foundation that if you're Spyglass and the people working on the Scream film, you got to bring them in at some point. Scream 5, okay, fine, right? Sidney, Ghostface didn't come to her. She went to Ghostface. You still kind of wondering, can question, why wouldn't a husband go with his wife, especially one that survived a Ghostface attack himself? But, okay, fine, she wanted to go avenge Dewey, you needed to stay back for the kids, right? You can kind of justify or talk yourself into why he wasn't in Scream 5. Now, Scream 6, you didn't have Sidney at all, right? And, until the whole Melissa Barrera thing, chances are, who knows if Sidney has ever even returned or Neve even comes back, right? Do they go that direction again if it's not for the whole Melissa Barrera debacle, right? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is that, like, if you never brought Sidney back, then you never have to answer those questions, right? If you could just kind of, hey, Sidney is living in her best life. She's happy. She's with her husband. She's with her family. That time has moved past her, right? She's good. And you can kind of just have people, do the whole filling in the headcanon and stuff, right? You could have people kind of just have their own thoughts and interpretations about how her life is and how she is as a mother and a wife and all that stuff. But you don't have that. You have Sidney Prescott, who is going to be in this new film. There's supposedly hiring or have hired. Rumor is McKenna Grace is supposed to be her daughter. We'll see if that really is what ends up confirming, because, everything's a rumor until it actually is confirmed. But, okay, so you have her daughter, you have all this stuff. You got to get the dad in. You can't have a Sydney-centric, Sydney family film and not have Mark Kincaid, who is her husband, in the film. And this is why so look, after Scream 3, kind of teased, not necessarily that, they would get married and have a bunch of kids, but that they would kind of end up together, right? He had this like infatuation with her the whole film. It's constantly kind of this running joke, like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're going to go buy her flowers and chocolate, or, and you get kind of this like build up. And then at the end, Sydney sees the door open, and then you see Mark pop up. He's in a sling, and he's just like, hey, we're going to watch a scary movie, right? Like, it kind of alluded to the potential of Sydney and Mark eventually ending up together, right? That's finally somebody that has had as dark of a past as she has, and somebody that can kind of relate and been in a situation like this, so they can kind of, maybe that's the relationship that would last. And then these new people decided to use that as like, hey, no, now they ended up together, they had kids, fine, that's great, right? Like, you could absolutely do that, but you got to have him in the film. Can't set all that stuff up, because again, you're talking about Sidney Prescott here. You're not talking about some random character. You're not talking about Joel or something, which I love Joel. I'd love to see him back, but if he had a family or whatever and he came back for like a thing, we wouldn't be like, oh, well, where's his family? How's that, right? Because he's just kind of a supporting character rather than a main character. Just like Gail, just like Dewey, right? If Gail ended up getting married to somebody else and having kids, we'd be like, where's the husband? Where's the kids, right? Because she's a huge part of the friendship. We grew up with her. Same thing with Dewey. It's like, where's the kids? Where's the thing? Like, it's just like, you can't just brush this over. And then you add in the fact that it's Sidney Prescott. The fact that she can even have kids is a miracle in and of itself, with considering all of this, the stuff she's gone through, right? And then, how is she as a mother? Is she overprotective? Is she overbearing? Is she a little too much, right? Because she's worried, she lost her mother, and, she had that traumatized childhood. So is it kind of a projection on her child? Is her child rebellious? Is her child, kind of like, Mom, you're like hounding me? Is she a great wife? Or is there like some toxicity, right? Are they just a white picket fence family, or are they kind of a little dysfunctional, right? Because, she has all kinds of walls, and she's lost every boyfriend she's had and all that. Like, are there things that, because you can go so many different directions with this, right? Like, and I don't want to see it just kind of get brushed under the rug. You establish something, you need to see it through, right? I don't want to see a bunch of story points that get established that we never see through. And you have an opportunity here with Patrick Dempsey, with Neve Campbell coming back. You got Gail now. Courtney Cox is in the fold. You got to get Patrick Dempsey, in my opinion. You can't drop the ball in this manner. You have to make sure you're bringing this story to fruition, especially if you're going to do a film centered around Sydney and her children. So what, Mark's just, he just doesn't care? How long are you going to keep brushing it off? I just think at some point you have to have him in this film one way or another, right? And I think they'll be able to get him for Scream 7. Again, he seemed very enthused. Now, granted, you could argue like, well, what is he supposed to do? Be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, no, he's on a television, and he's got to kind of play it right. But I think he's been in talks on several occasions. They've talked to him. I don't see him. Obviously, there's a path and a curiosity there, right? What does it take to get to that path and curiosity to see that through? I know we're gonna find out, but I do love that he's at least talking about it and on board, right? I do love that he's like, hey, I'm waiting on the script. We're gonna figure it out, and we're a couple years ago it was kind of like, he's probably not gonna ever come back. So we'll see. Like I said, I would imagine if you're doing, like, if you establish that story point, I would imagine that you had some inclination that Patrick Dempsey would come back at some point. Right? Like, I don't think that they would set up that story plot without knowing Patrick Dempsey's at least interested enough to where, money and stuff. I mean, money talks, right? And like I said, if I'm Patrick Dempsey, I'm using this leverage to my ability, right? Like, hey, let's make it happen, right? But it's going to cost you, because what else are you going to do? You're going to recast me? So I don't know. And could they recast him? That's another thing. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think, like, yes, he has to be in this film? Do you think, nah, it doesn't really matter either way? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.